is Mary Jo Clark. I'm a teacher of art, but I do it a little differently. I kind of come in the back door. I don't follow traditional methods and I don't go by a book. I go by inspiration. So when I'm setting up a class, it's what I'm in the mood for that day and I want to excite my students. I started working in watercolor pencils in 1982 after an aneurysm. So my brain was working a little bit differently. I wasn't as structured as I usually was, and I worked in acrylic paints only, and everything had to be precise and exact and whatever. So when I show you different things today, you're going to see the difference because I'm more spontaneous and it's fun. So the classes are not stoic. They're a little bit lively and it's relaxing, and I have gotten a lot of good feedback from my students. So I'm going to explain some of the things that we use in the classroom to help you, because when you go to the store, I understand from my students, we don't get much help out there these days. So I'll try and answer your questions here. I specialize in watercolor pencil. My favorite brand is Kimberly. The other one I use is Derwent, D-E-R-W-E-N-T. Now the Kimberly comes with a pencil sharpener, which you'll need. This is one of those 59-cent deals, and you get this even in the drugstore. But you're going to need a pencil sharpener. You can't use the automatic crank kind because you'll wind up with your investment this big. It just eats up the pencil lead. And this is paint inside. What's in your pencil is the same kind of paint that's in this box. It's the same pigments. So if you lay your pencil in water, it'll melt and you'll have nothing but a hollow piece of wood. So it's very important for you to wipe off or get your pencils away from the water as you go. As an adjunct to the watercolor pencils, a good old box of Crayola. This is the kind you use in school. You don't need expensive watercolors to get wonderful results. And the way you make these sophisticated is there's 2 tube paints. These are expensive, but you don't need to buy the whole set of tube paints. I'm trying to save you money. So this is Cotman, and you can buy these at the art store. One is Payne's Gray, P-A-Y-N-E-S, gray. The other one is Chinese White. Together, you don't need anything else but these items to paint with. This is all the paint you need. So you don't have a $100 investment when you do this. But trust me, once you get into it, I've had students start out with a box and we wind up with this much because we keep adding colors and we keep adding pencils, and you'll see. You start out with a little box of stuff and pretty soon you've got this roller cart with all these things in it. Next thing is paintbrush. I like the Taklon, which is a nylon fiber, because it springs back. You can push it down and you can fan it out and you can get wide leaves or petals on flowers. When it springs back, you can get those fine little lines that you need for any design work or fine-tune something. Number 8 is what I recommend. You can do a 6 or 8, you can do 10 or 12. But to start out, I would recommend a number 8. It'll get you where you want to go, again, without spending a lot of money. Believe it or not, the watercolor pencils, when you put them on dry paper, and it's dry, it's like any other pencil, you can erase it. You can't go completely white, but you can do a lot of fixing. A lot of my students complained that they didn't start into watercolor because you can't fix anything. I said, oh yes you can. You can fix it with water, you can fix it with an eraser, You can go darker. We'll go through these things as I go through classes. But I wanted to get you started and to understand what you're getting into. Another thing is a natural sponge. These little cuties have all these little ridges and stuff. This is your bush. This is your tree. You don't have to sit there and dab the paint and drive yourself crazy. This will do it for you. Now, this is the regular dish sponge. You can see it doesn't have a lot of these little nooks and crannies. It's a square edge. This kind of sponge is good for wiping across your page or getting edges. If you want to do something square, you can cut these up and make these into shapes and stuff. But the one that we'll use a lot of is the natural sponge. And you can buy them in a bag. This is my baggie, but you can buy these in the drugstore, and I think they come $5 to a bag. If you go to the paint store, they're too expensive. So try and go as inexpensive as you can to make yourself happy. Another thing you'll use is a Micron pen. This is permanent ink. Don't get a water-soluble ink. And I use a .02. .02. That's the finest you want to get. Don't go bigger or whatever. This is a water-soluble pen that I use, but you can see how fine the tip is. It's really, really delicate. It's a steel tip. You can do a lot of fine work with this. Also, you can use a Sharpie. Make sure that it says extra, extra fine or ultra fine on it. These are hard to find, but you can see this has got a really fine tip. You don't want to see that black felt at the end of it because it'll give you nothing but really hard, thick lines. As you go along, keep one of these in mind too, just a 6-inch straight edge ruler. If we get into doing barns or buildings or whatever for perspective, you'll need a straight edge. Getting to white in watercolor is really hard to do. Trial and error. But if you get that Cotman's Chinese white, that's what they recommend for watercolor. Also, there's a white Higgins ink. It's a permanent ink, and it comes in a bottle. This is pretty expensive stuff. But this is what the Watercolor Society of America recommends for white. Also, there's the absence of color on your paper, but I don't like you to outline things, so I kind of stay away from that. This is masking fluid, the all-infamous masking fluid. This is really expensive. It's rubber-based, and it blocks out spaces on your paper so the paint cannot get absorbed. And after you paint your background or whatever you're painting over, this stuff peels off and it leaves a white space. So there's 3 different ways of doing white on your paper. You can do inexpensive, which is don't do anything at all, but there's a lot of technique going. We'll go through all this stuff. Another thing is really fun, and you don't have to have it, but if you do, it's a cool thing. It's just a little squirt bottle. I got this at Drug Mart, and you put plain water in it. So if you want to reconstitute the paint or blend it or spread it or get some funky looking patterns on it, this is great to use. It's more for special effects. So I've covered all this so far. This is saran wrap. This is for special effects. You don't need to have this, but it's fun to play with. And we'll do some sessions with salt. I use Epsom salts and with the saran wrap. So don't be surprised if you see this somewhere in the future in a class. The pièce de résistance is the paper. If you use cheap paper, 90 pounds, it's going to buckle on you. You're not going to be able to spread it. The pencils are a little bit tougher on the paper than your regular paints. But then again, if you use too much water with your paints, it starts to peel. So if you get 140-pound paper, you can go higher. But this is 400 series. I like Strathmore, but I see that they're phasing this out. Look down in fine print. You have to look down, way down at the bottom. It says for the poundage, the 140 pound. This is another brand. This is Canson. And it says on the bottom, 140 pound. But what I found is the same logo on another tablet is also for the 90 pounds. So you have to really, really look for that 140 pound before you just grab and go with this paper. I've screwed up and I have gotten the 90 pound paper. And it doesn't do anything good. Now, paper comes in all kinds of sizes. You can get really, really big ones, which is hard to work with. You can get the regular 9 by 12, equivalent to 8.5 by 11. Or, this is fun for when you do greeting cards, whatever. You can get these, and you can go smaller, you can get postage size, but these are really fun, they're fun things to use. You can fold them, and you have a greeting card automatically. And we'll get into that in class too. But look how cool that is. And you don't have to cut, paste, whatever. It's just a folded card. So there's all kinds of things on the market. I just want you to be careful when you're grabbing things that you get good quality. Because if you go for the least expensive, some of this made in a foreign country that I will not name, it gets gooey. It doesn't spread. I've had some of my younger students get the cheaper brand, not Crayola. There's other ones out there that have good pigment in it, but this is easy, cheap. You can get it at Drug Mart or anything. You don't have to go to an art store to get it. But this blends really nice. It's got wonderful pigment in it. And it lasts a long time. Look at this wonderful box that's all messed up. That's me. And I've been using this for a long time. So the one thing to do is don't put the water in and leave it, because once again you will get soupy colored water. So that's all the explanations for all of your supplies. We're going to demo watercolor pencils. This is the pack I showed you can buy. I like Kimberly or Derwent because the binder that holds the paint together is softer and it's more blendable. If you get something that's too hard, it's going to cut into the paper. So this is what I call spritzing, and it's a fun thing to do. You put plenty of water on your brush and you hit your brush at a 90-degree angle towards the paper, and you put all this wonderful color down. This is good for backgrounds, special effects, whatever, but you don't have to leave it like that. This is paint. See, I can paint with this too. I can blend it. The more water I add, the lighter it is. But look how magical that looks. And then, if you hate it, I got this spritzer thing. You can kind of blend it out. So if you made a mistake, look how cool that is. It's gone. There's a little bit of the stain left, but with the darkened pencils, you can cover that up. If you want to mix colors, you just put one color over the other and spritz it. Okay, some different kinds of pigment in here so you can see the colors. It's almost the same. I'll do a green. And you don't have to put it in any specific pattern or whatever, but again, if you wanted to paint, I use a technique which I call squiggling. I don't go back and forth with my paintbrush. I squiggle it, and look, it mixes all those little dots together because you're pushing down on the paper. With this paper, when they manufacture it, it has a texture or tooth to the paper. I call them little pillows. So if you take your paintbrush and just go across the page, all those little pillows appear, and it doesn't go into the paper. It's kind of striped or streaky or whatever. But if you push the brush around and you use like round strokes, you push it in between those little pillows and the paint gets distributed. So it's a technique you gotta play with a little bit, but it's fun to do. Now, what I like about this paint in pencil form is you can use this dry, and this is where you'll see the tooth of the paper. And I use dry paper, I don't use wet paper. And I'll show you why in a minute. It ruins the piece. Okay, so here's dry paint. And you have to remember, this isn't colored pencil. This is paint in a pencil form that acts like colored pencils. So you can certainly use the same techniques, except with this, you can add water. So see, I'm blending colors on here dry. Now, what I don't want to do is go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. See, I get a muddy color. If I want to keep, like I put red in here, if I want to keep it to the red side, say I was doing like a red barn or something. If you go in one direction, you can keep that. This side I put yellow. So I'm going to get like a yellow-green. Don't go back and forth and back and forth. You can go in one direction. And when you're painting, don't go up and down and then back and forth. Try and go in one direction. If you wanted to go up and down, you could go up and down, but stay that way. Now, if I added water to this, to the paint that's here, I can kind of make it spill down the page, and I just keep adding water. And I can make a tree. Then all I do is I follow one side of the tree with the dark side. And I can mix colors. I can do all kinds of crazy colors in here. It doesn't really matter. I can mix and match. But I'm using this dry. But if you don't draw, it's really a cool way to make trees. Again, this is the beginner's class. If you're my students that have been with me for a while, you've already done this. But I needed to start out some new people with the techniques you've already learned so they don't get lost. But anyway, you've got trees. And all I did was dribble paint. And then, this is where this is cool. This is only a demo, this is not a lesson. So, you get more detail when you have a regular lesson. But I wanted to show you all the cool things you can do. Now, this is a wet sponge and I wrung it out. I'm not dripping water. It shouldn't drip water when I squeeze it. And I can take these wonderful watercolor pencils and use this like a paintbrush and put the paint right on this. See those little tips? Pick up the paint. And I dab on here and it makes leaves. So and you can put other colors on here if I wanted a little bit more yellow or if I wanted red for fall or whatever. I can just add that to it. I don't push hard, I just pounce it. That's what you can do. So, I showed you about spritzing. Now this is really nifty because this should be dry now. If it's glossy, it's wet. If it's matte finish and it's not reflecting light, it's dry. But you see all these white spaces in between. I can add a background. Say I wanted to put in a sunset or something, or I wanted to change the color. I can certainly do that without blending the background in because I didn't wet the paper. This is all dry paint, and look at that special effect. You can't do this with regular watercolor because it blends immediately and it makes the paper wet. But this dry pigment works wonders. And then if you still wanted to change it and make it darker, you can always add like another color. Say I wanted to do a sunset or something. I can always add another color, add the water, and that background is dry. If you don't have soaking wet and you don't have all that runny water, you can change it. Now I can keep going darker, darker, darker. I can add other colors. I can put things on top of it. I'm just putting some grass on the knoll here. I'm using purple just so you can see the difference. But see, I didn't compromise the background at all. It's still there. That original blue spritz is still there. Now, if I was using regular watercolors, a lot of times I would have used too much water and the paper would have buckled in some instances. Even the 140-pound paper, if you use too much water, will be compromised and it'll tear on you. But you can do all kinds of things with this. I do a lot of spritzing. There's my paintbrush. It's not dark enough, you won't be able to see that. I'll do darker so you can see. This gets my paint down faster and it's more interesting. You gotta get enough paint down to where you don't have a lot of white paper showing. Then you crinkle up the saran wrap and you kind of put that over the paint for a minute. If you pick it up right away, the molecules go together and you get a blob. what you want to do is separate the paint molecules a little bit, and it dries differently on the paper. You'll see it makes tracks. This is just the time where you whistle to yourself or hum a tune or whatever. I'm not kidding, you have to hum a tune. If you have a hairdryer, you could use a hairdryer, but with the saran wrap, it's not going to penetrate. So those people that are sophisticated enough to use hairdryers, it won't work with this. Anyway, it makes patterns on your paper. Then you can come in and color patterns and make unique shapes and stuff. If you're doing florals and you want something really fun in the background, this is a medium to use. Now I'm going to show you something here. My paper was wet. If I take and use this on wet paper, that's why I don't use the wet paper, you can't blend this. See, it's going to be a blob forever. The paper absorbs the paint and holds tight to it. So that's why I don't use wet paper. Now, if you wanted that blob there, for whatever reason, you could leave it. That is a big mistake to me. So it all depends on what your point of view is. If you're doing like the center of a flower or something, that might be acceptable. You know, I could do the center of a flower and leave it dark like that. But what you're doing is you're cutting a groove into the paper. If you use the point of this pencil, you're disturbing those little pillows and you're making little rivers for the paint to run into. And when it dries like an indentation. You can feel it. I don't know if you can see that or not because it's light yellow. I can do it darker. Like here. If I did like dark grass, and I'm using the point, I'm cutting into the paper, which I don't want to do. So normally when I'm putting color down, I'll use the side of the pencil. That way I can get in between things. And it's a light touch. You don't have to press very hard at all. And you can get in between, or you can do spaces. When I blend this out, it's softer. It's not a hard line. You have the darkness, but you also have softness there. Now, when I add water to this, where I put those hard lines, it's going to stay hard lines. Even if I wipe this off, it's going to stay there. So if you want that effect, it's good. If you don't, it's not a good thing. Now, say you put something down, and I always say start out with your lighter colors. Don't start out dark. You can always go darker, but you can't go lighter. So if you're unsure of your colors, start out light. So I did this dry. Now, I changed my mind. I don't like this. So I can take an eraser and I can take some of that color off to where if I added water, it wouldn't mix with another color. It's off the surface of the paper. Paper's stained just a little bit because it is paint pigment, but you can change the color. I can go blue in that section. Again, you can see the pillows of the paper. I didn't add water. This is dry medium. As soon as I add water, it changes the structure. That's the difference between having paint in a pencil form and then you kind of squiggle it, because remember, you're working the paint into those textures on the paper, those little pillow things. So by doing that, you can get really nice blend of color. Now, there's another way to paint with these. And it's a wet brush, and you add the paint to the brush. This is called loading your brush. You load the paint up so you can see the paint on the fibers of the brush. That way you know you have plenty on there. And then this acts just like any other watercolor. You can see what I'm doing. Paint's on my brush. You don't have drippy water. That's the thing you're going to have to learn to control with this, and what my students have most trouble with is using way too much water. Now, if you have a darker color and you want to lighten it up, you can add a little bit of water. But you have paper towel to dab on, and you also have the lip of whatever receptacle you have for your water to kind of get that last little drip off and not take it to the paper. Also, when you're painting, I have found a good thing to do, because you have paint left over, is to pull, like this is a petal of a flower, pull it towards the middle. Don't start in the middle and go out, because then all that leftover paint that you can't do anything with is going to be in the outside petal, and it's going to ruin your piece. It's just going to blop there. And then you're going to take paper towel and take it off, then it's going to be too light, then you're going to have to put dark on it. It's just a vicious circle. So I have done a simple flower just with my paintbrush. Now, I don't wash my paintbrush, I leave the color in there, and I add another color to it, a darker color, because I want to harmonize the leaves a little bit. I want to soften that color. And I'm not dipping into the water, I'm not going back and forth. I'm just, my brush has enough water in it that I can just put leaves in. So you can have a rendition. Now, you want details, you can go back in with the dry pencil and put any kind of funky detail in here you want. you're not restricted in your expression, how you express yourself. So I put in some details there. Okay, so I'm not happy with the color, okay? So I'm gonna change this. Now the paint's dry, so I'm gonna add another color. And I'm gonna do dry over that. And that's gonna perk up the color. So this is really cool, because if I added water, it would take away the paint and make it so pale, you'd have to start all over again. But because I'm not washing out the pigment, it's on the paper, I can add to it. That's why I say, start out light, you can always go darker. So I've now changed the color a bit. If I want to change it again, I can add more detail. I can add veining in the flower. And it's kind of cool. So they have just a real quick rendition of whatever. If you want to do background, you don't have to take your paintbrush and go all around. You can use this spritzing thing. And if it gets on the petals of your flower, here comes correction. You just take plain water and back it off. With this paint, if you go down, you put paint on. If you go against the tooth of the paper, you take the paint off. So here is one of those magic corrections that I did. I got green paint on here, and I just took plain water, and I don't scrub back and forth. I just take it in one direction and lift it off. So you can put background here, and then if you want to, you can pull it through. Now this is really delicate. You don't hardly even have to touch the paper. If you hear yourself scrubbing on the paper, your touch is a little bit too heavy. But this is just an easy exercise. You can make up a flower, a Martian tulip. It doesn't matter what you're doing. But you see how clever that is. If you're doing a branch of a tree, this is really neat because you can do the texture of the tree. And you can do it all with the one medium. You don't have to look for other things to work with. You can add color on, and it doesn't have to be precise, just willy-nilly. And the edge comes with the water. And again, you only go in one direction. You pull it down, it blends itself. Look how gorgeous that is. And you're using a damp brush. I didn't go back to the water. I'm just pulling the color and blending it on the page. Then what I call borrowing, I can take some of this color off, and I had paint enough to do rendering of branches Again, these are silly little things for you to do to get started. You don't have to start with a Rembrandt or Picasso or whatever. Start out with simple things so you don't get discouraged. And you're going to come up with, I can do that. You're not going to come up with, oh, I can't. And I don't want you to put negative thoughts into your psyche. I'm never going to be able to do. Don't use the word never. Don't use the word can't. Just have fun with this and play with it. And be surprised how many cool things you can do. This is good for your brain. This is good for relaxation. So see, I did a tree. I got like 3 or 4 colors in there, and I'm not stressed at all. I just kind of take the brush, go up the tree, come down the tree. You do that with anything. Use this brush to the best of your abilities. Use it full fan, or use the tip. Blend a color here that you can see. Use this full fan. Look at that. Or you can use the tip. That's why I like these tack-on brushes. You don't have to buy 27 different brushes. For the most part, you can get away with just one. And again, I pull the paint towards the bottom, and if it settles down there, it's a good thing. So play, I encourage you to play with these. Do not sharpen them when they're wet. Do not leave these in water. Don't dunk them in the water unless we do stamping, which will be a class later on down the line. But for the most part, keep these dry. If you get water on them, dry them off. They won't melt. Everything will be wonderful. Thank you.